events out of the public eye.
George Knapp was an eyewitness to these people and an eyewitness to who they are, where they were going, and what they're doing.
As Bill heads to get this new information, Ted and Pat shift their focus to Pennsylvania, where a crash in the small community of Kecksburg is yielding fresh evidence.
The Kecksburg incident is a cornerstone of ufology. It is Pennsylvania's Roswell. We know that something crashed from the sky. It was on TV, it was on the radio.
We have a range of instruments. If we can find a position that we feel with high confidence could be the crash site, we can use these instruments to see what we can learn about what's underneath the soil.
As Ted preps a full-scale scrutiny of the Kecksburg site, testimony from the last surviving witnesses could show that the military has been complicit in a cover-up for years.
I stood there and I walked around looking at it. This thing ain't from here.
In Needles, California, a glowing object crashes into the desert, seemingly out of control. Witnesses say it is retrieved by a group of military helicopters. But the incident doesn't end there. People see unmarked planes landing at the local airport. Planes identical to those reportedly used for transport to the top-secret military base at Area 51. But this has all happened before, and not just at Roswell. Over 40 years ago, something crashed in the sleepy town of Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. But whatever it wasn't out of control. According to witnesses, it had to be piloted by someone. On December 9th, 1965, around 4:45 p.m., something is moving in the sky. It's a glowing fireball, but many think that this can't be a meteor because it's moving too slowly. Whatever it is, the object loses control and crashes. What immediately transpires bears eerie similarities to what has just happened in Needles. Is it just a coincidence, or are these two crashes mirror images of each other 43 years apart? Bill Burns is meeting with Stan Gordon, the leading investigator of the Kecksburg incident. He's researched this case for over 2 decades.
Witnesses out tell us the object turned and came back in towards Kecksburg. This object, it came down as though it was making almost like a controlled landing. And moments after it fell, people reported like a column of bluish-gray smoke rising up out of the woods that dissipated very quickly.
According to research, hundreds, if not thousands, of people in Michigan, Ohio, and Ontario, Canada, reportedly witnessed the UFO as it traveled on a trajectory that finally led to its crash landing in Kecksburg.
The police departments, the radio and TV station were being bombarded with calls, and as it proceeded into Westmoreland County, the media out in this area began to be overwhelmed with reports coming in.
Witnesses agree with Stan Gordon's findings. This tiny town was consumed by the incident. No one had ever seen anything like what happened that night. Pat meets with one witness, Bill Buellbush, who saw the object fly over and crash in Westmoreland County.
Bill, tell me what happened.
Heard this sizzling noise, and then I seen this red fireball coming. Come over like just like this, and I watched it. And it went up towards the mountain. It made the turn and come back, a perfect turn, and come down. It just seemed like it was trying to find a place to land.
Would you say this thing was under intelligent control then?
It had to be.
Buellbush says that he got in his Corvair and drove to what he believed was a downed aircraft.
So I grabbed my flashlight and went down through the woods. And I could see it down there. I figured, well, how can they come out? There ain't no windows and there ain't no rivets and no nothing on it, you know.
So you got a close look at this thing?
Oh, I was only about 8 feet away from it.
Was it smoking? Was there anything?
It smelled like sulfur. It smelled like rotten eggs.
Bill Bush really helps us eliminate some of the more prosaic explanations of what this could have been. The meteor, or maybe a crashed airplane or capsule. He saw this fireball coming down in the sky and turning. He specifically said that this had to be under intelligent control.
Soon after, emergency personnel reached the crash site, and volunteer fireman Jim Romanski is one of them. He is also surprised by what he sees.
I was shocked because I was prepared for a smashed up airplane. And here was this humongous piece of metal buried into this drainage ditch.
Could you describe exactly how it was buried?
We're talking nighttime, first of all. We're talking piles of brush around this thing because it come flying down through the trees.
Romanski says the UFO was acorn-shaped and had a ring of strange markings that encircled the entire object. This description is rare, unlike other reported UFO shapes, such as triangles and discs. And there's more. Strange hieroglyphics are reminiscent of another case. The Bentwaters UFO that was reported to have landed near a British military base in 1980 displayed similar markings to those the Kecksburg witnesses describe.
Have you ever seen anything like this ever in your life?
No, absolutely not. My impression after I looked at this thing, I stood there and I thought about it and I walked around looking at it, this thing ain't from here.
And then, a development that would repeat itself 43 years later in Needles. Within hours of the crash, dozens of military personnel, including Army and Air Force, arrive on the scene. They reportedly cordon off the area, preventing the public from reaching the crash site. Inside this restricted zone, they are searching. Bob Gaddy, a reporter with the Greensburg Tribune, was dispatched to the crash scene, and he distinctly remembers the intimidating military presence.
When I got there, there were probably at least a dozen military personnel, in addition to Pennsylvania State Police officers. I said, I need to go down there. They said, there's nothing there. And I said, well, if there's nothing there, why can't I go in there?
Gaddy tells Pat that the military, not the state police, were clearly in charge of the scene.
I've never experienced a time in a civilian situation where the military had come in and taken control of an accident site. Why would the Army be there?
We were stopped by a military. You heard the bolt snap on the rifle, and I stopped in my tracks, and Ron stopped, and we talked to him for a second. He told us to get out, get back to where we came from.
He looked at me and pointed his finger at me. He said, nobody goes down in there with us.
Witnesses tell Stan Gordon that later in the evening, they see a large flatbed truck drive into the crash area. Within the hour, the truck drives from the site in a hurry, carrying something under a tarp.
If you would have walked in front of it, they would never stop for you.
Gordon says that during his own investigation, Jim Romanski, Bill Buellbush, and others led him to a spot they said was the crash site. These interviews were conducted independently, and each witness led him to the exact same spot.
I'm very hopeful tomorrow we can find the exact location that was taken to 20-some years ago.
Okay. It sounds like there was some sort of crash. I can bring in ground-penetrating radar and see if we can find anything that hasn't been found before. Not only does Stan have multiple corroborating witnesses who pinpoint the location, but also it sounds like there's a very good chance we'll be able to find some sort of debris.
Eyewitnesses and investigators have seen this site before, but never with technology like this.
You think a signature like this might be consistent with a signature made by a crashed vehicle? Is that possible?
Yeah, that's possible.
And across the country, the Needles case breaks wide open, with reports of officials that could be the infamous Men in Black.
They are legitimately federal agents.
It was something other than this world.
In December 1965, a flaming object is reported falling through the sky in Canada, Michigan, and Ohio. In these locations, some claim that debris falls to Earth, that sonic booms are heard, and that a seismograph records the impact. But none of this evidence ever surfaces. It is only in the small Pennsylvania town of Kecksburg where anything real is verified. Several witnesses report that in this ravine, an acorn-shaped object with strange markings crashed. And it is this location that has become the investigation's focal point. The team will hike in with researcher Stan Gordon, geologist Steve Kite, and Pete Hutchinson, an electromagnetic surveyist. Gordon compares the terrain with a photograph he took here in 1985.